let's move it along with part 2 of my Stephen King collection. All right. So now we have another Richard Bachman book, which is Thinner. Here, this is a reprint where we have Stephen King writing as Richard Bachman, though the original version, which is a hardcover, only said Richard Bachman. Okay. So I got this reprint, which is a soft cover, or rather a paperback. Now here we have the Tommyknockers. This is a library edition hardcover. Here, haven't read this one, though I have seen the miniseries, so I know what it's about. It's about aliens in a small town, right there. Not considered to be one of his best novels, but anyway, I'm looking forward to reading it. After that comes the drawing of the Three here, which continues the Dark Tower series. This is the second installment in the series. Then we continue with The Dark Half, a novel that is inspired by his experiences as being an author with two names, Stephen King and Richard Bachman. So this is about this author who also has a pseudonym, who also writes novels under another name, and that other identity comes to life. So it's a pretty interesting read, this one, The Dark Half. This is 4 Past Midnight. This is a collection of novellas, not a short story collection, novellas. That means that there are stories. They are stories that are longer than short stories, but they're shorter than novels. All right, let's see if I can get. We have The Langoliers, Secret Window, Secret Garden, The Library Policeman, and which is the 4th one, The Sundog. Okay, 4 Past Midnight. This one is a regular bookstore edition, hardcover. I got this one at a book fair. All right, let's continue here now with, let's see, it is Needful Things, another very thick book. Here about a shop owner who gives you exactly what you need, but you may not want it. All right, Needful Things. Very interesting read. Now comes Geralds Game. This is also a regular bookstore edition hardcover. All right, not one of my favorite novels. I think this one should have worked best as a novella or even a short story. I think it just drags on way too much. The premise, of course, you may know it. It's about a woman, that is handcuffed to a bedpost, because of some sexual hijinks. The husband, dies before during the sex act, and she is trapped right there and handcuffed to the post. Now, that incredibly simple premise is all of this, because she starts to remember things about her past, and she rambles on and on and on. So not one of my favorite books. This one is a companion to this other one, which is Dolores Claiborne. Now, why do I say a companion one? Both stories are not related, but they occur during the same time, which is during an eclipse. All right, and this is the one Stephen King book that I actively did not like at all. I mean, this is about a woman that is accused of murder. And the entire book is told in the first person. It is her giving her confession to the police. They are recording it on cassette tapes. But all of this is her just non-stop rambling on and on and on. In a real police investigation, they would not have let her, just go on and on for what is the equivalent of about 8 hours. Now imagine just hearing somebody just rant during 8 hours. I mean, it is boring, and this book is a bit boring, though I do understand a lot of people do like this book. But this is my absolute least favorite Stephen King book. Enough of that. Another collection of short stories. Here we have Nightmares and Dreamscapes. All right, a lot of stories here. Pretty thick book. There's a bit of water damage there. I got this one at a book fair. It is a regular bookstore edition. Can't go wrong with these short stories collections because there's always a lot of good stuff there. Now we go with Insomnia. Here, a very interesting book with a very interesting premise. Regarding not being able to sleep and what that does to you. Right there, the characters are also interesting because they are older people. This is not I have read this book, though not in this edition. My original edition was exactly like this one, but during storage, mold started to grow on it, so I had to throw it away. I got another one. We continue now with A Rose Matter here. Here, another hardcover, is it? Yes, it's a regular bookstore edition. Haven't read this one, though I'm looking forward to it. Again, a female protagonist. Though I hope that character doesn't ramble on as much as Dolores Claiborne. Now here we go with The Green Mile, which I have here in these individual editions, which I bought when they originally came out. You will notice the titles are in Spanish. That's because I live in Mexico. That's where I originally bought these. So I'm glad to have the individual ones. But I also have them collected in English here in this movie tie-in edition for The Green Mile. All right. After this comes The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. And this is, yes, a regular bookstore edition. Hardcover. It's a thin book. I haven't read this one yet. Now, Hearts in Atlantis. I had hesitated buying this one because it didn't sound like a horror novel at all. It is not, of course, a novel at all. It is a collection of short stories and essays regarding the era of the 60s, all right, in which Stephen King was a young man himself. So he has some insight into that era. After watching the movie Hearts in Atlantis, which I really liked, then I decided to buy this book. It is a regular edition, bookstore edition hardcover. Here we now have On Writing. This is not a novel. This is a book that was written about writing. So it's Stephen King's thoughts on the craft of being a writer. Very interesting. Very interesting. Even if you yourself are not a writer or an aspiring writer, this is really good. He tells things about his own life, about his own writing process, about other authors that he admires. So if you're a King fan or just a fan of reading in general, recommend it. Another collection of short stories, Everything's Eventual. Very good. Okay. Now comes another novel, From a Buick Egg. This is a very misunderstood novel. Every time people show this novel, they start saying that it's related to Christine. The book about the killer car. It is not. It is not about Christine. It is not even about a killer car, even though a car does appear in the book, Buick 8 for that matter. But that car doesn't go around, has a life of its own and go around killing people. So it has nothing to do with Christine. So stop saying that, all right? This is a book that is not one of his most popular ones because it has one of those non-endings, and it's really a book about characters and how they relate to living every day with something that is of a supernatural occurrence. It's like, how do you live when you next to something that is out of this world? That's what this book explores. So it's very much a character study. Another very much misunderstood book, The Colorado Kid. Again, a book with a non-ending. But again, the objective here is to examine sort of like the nature of mysteries and how they affect us, right? A very short book here by Hard Case Crime. This was in fact the first edition of this book, even though it is a paperback. Love that cover. The Colorado Kid. Rounding out this part 2 of my collection, we have Cell, which again, misunderstood. A lot of people say that this is a zombie book. It is not. You know, it is not about people returning from the dead and eating people's brains. Though it is about people behaving in a zombie-like fashion. It's got one of those die-cut covers, this paperback edition. It's about people behaving in a zombie-like fashion, you know, after being infected with something in their cell phones. All right. But it's a good read. Not one of his best, but it's a pretty good read. All right, well, that does it for part 2 of my Stephen King book collection. By the way, of course, you've noticed that I don't have all of them. The ones that I don't have, I'm going to put them on the screen, you know, mentioning which ones I'm missing. All right, well, thank you for watching this part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. So long.